Hey everyone, welcome to a special episode of The Forge, part of our Pathbreaker series where we talk to leaders who believe that the status quo simply isn't good enough. I'm super excited to welcome Don Schuerman, the CTO and VP of Product Strategy and Marketing at Pega Systems, to the Forge podcast. Don, thank you so much for joining today. I know you're extremely busy with the Pega world right around the corner.
It's still great to be here, and it's great to have some of these conversations. We're talking about a lot of this at Pega World this week.
Well, we're looking forward to some of those great announcements. I just want to thank you for your amazing leadership over the past 27 years at Pega. I mean, that in and of itself is a feat, especially in this day and age. The technology has matured so much, and we're grateful for the partnership. We are big believers in Pega and the relationship that we built. So thank you.
Well, and we're big believers in Coforge and the great work that you do as well.
So I have a few questions that I like to kick things off with every guest. And so we'll just jump right in. Everyone has what I call those life moments. We have them personally, we have them professionally. If you don't mind, could you share one or two of those that you felt defined your path early in your career, something that significantly shaped your approach to, let's say, leadership or technology?
Yeah, I guess I give two. One career centric and one more kind of life centric. Career wise, I started at Pega as an implementer, so a support person and a technology implementer, and had moved into our engineering organization, was writing code for a living, and got the opportunity to go out and be sort of the engineer who went on sales calls to explain sales. And I got up. This was the first time I had been to one of these client meetings. We had a big, salesperson did a presentation, and then the technology team and the business team went into separate rooms. I went into the technology team to do an architectural overview. The business team went off, and Alan, our CEO, kind of said, "Well, I think I'll go into the technology one." So, my first time ever presenting for a client, and we've got our CEO kind of sitting in the back of the room. And, I get up and it just on the whiteboard, and the CIO from the client is there, and he's asking questions, and we're kind of jibing, and we're having a really interesting, I think, conversation. I'm explaining how our software works. He's telling me a little bit about how their technology is architected. I'm explaining how we can fit into that. I think he's coming to appreciate the fact that we can work very well with their existing architecture. And the overall, the conversation went really well. And at the end of it, Alan walks up to me and he says, "Now that was pretty good. I have one bit of feedback," and I brace myself for the thing I did wrong during this conversation. And Alan says, "It's really good to put the cap back on the pen when you pause speaking. That way the marker doesn't dry up." And I think the thing that I took away from this was like this moment of stepping into something that was uncomfortable, stepping into something that I'd never done before, but learning that, if you trust the knowledge you've already brought and the skills that have kind of brought you to that moment, you can often walk away successful. So, being able to step into those new things and those new moments. The other piece of learning that I come back to is, and I actually think this is a leadership thing that I try to remember a lot. And frankly, I don't do a huge job of remembering it, but it's a good one that I probably should print up and stick on my wall. When my now wife and I were first started dating, she was going through some work stuff and was not particularly happy. And she came home one day and was kind of ranting and raving. And I, started in classic engineering mode. Like, well, here's what we need to do. My wife looks up at me and she says, "Stop. I do not need you to solve my problem. I just need you to hear it." And I think knowing in life when to be the solver and when to be just the listener and actually lead by the questions you ask as opposed to the answers you give, I think is a leadership lesson that I continue to try to learn every day.
So listening is such a major part of communication. I agree with that 100%. And when I was prepping for the podcast, one of my guys called me to talk about a deal. And I'm sitting there with two minds. One is, okay, I got to continue to prep here. And the other is, I really need to stop and just listen to what this person is saying to me because it's critically important to him. And so that's a good lesson. And it's a tough one to adhere to.
Yeah.
Uh, so last weekend, my daughter graduated from college, and last night I sat her down to give her a little guidance on how to approach her role in her current job. She mentors young girls at the Boys and Girls Club of America, and I don't know if she'll listen. I probably wouldn't have at that age, but I'm wondering what's one piece of advice if you could give to your younger self, knowing the environment we're in today, AI, how fast things are changing? What's that one piece of advice you'd give to your younger self?
Um, Trust in the others around you. A large portion of my personal leadership journey has been, trying to move from being the person who does the thing and can do a lot of the things pretty well to being the person who actually finds people who can do the things even better, right? And gives them the empowerment and the space to go do it. And, I think that is learning that skill early, especially if, you have ambitions to move into a leadership role, I think is really important.
So that is not what I expected. I thought maybe you'd say, you know what, be a plumber or
Yeah.
study this.
Well, I mean, here's the other thing, the piece of advice that I do give to people, and I actually had a friend of ours' son who's about to graduate from high school and is looking at school. What I will say is, I think I, I think a lot of sort of single discipline paths are going to increasingly dry up, right? So don't just learn to be a computer programmer because we're going to have AI tools that can program the way most humans can program, or we're going to move computer programming to wherever we can do it for the most cost effective way in the world, right? The But if you develop what I kind of think of as sort of like a left brain, right brain mentality of, yeah, I'm going to learn computer science, I'm going to learn some of the engineering fast, but I'm also going to grow my communication skills. I'm also going to grow my ability to tell a story, my ability to not just program, but actually explain and understand why I'm programming what I'm programming. And if you can have a foot sort of both in the technology and the humanities, or the technology side and the business side, I think those are the people who are really setting themselves up for great careers. I mean, I think that personally, being able to both understand the technology, but also be an effective communicator of the technology has been what really has built my career on.
So that's a really interesting point. And I think that multidiscipline advice is super important. I know my son is getting his master's in computational linguistics. And for one of the courses, his project, he not only did the coding in Python, but he implemented physical, so a little bit of mechanical and electrical
Yeah.
engineering into this project and coding in C++. So he's not a mechanical or electrical
Right.
engineer, but he felt it was critically important to have those additional elements. And I think that hopefully is baked into some of the uh, that next wave, that next generation of technologists that are coming up.
Well, and also what I hear in there is like this latent curiosity of, right, like, I need to do this, so I'm going to just figure out how to do it. And I think, I was talking recently to somebody who kind of works in the school side, and there's a point to which any technology you learn in school is going to be outdated by the time you actually show up in the business world. So what you really need to learn is the ability to learn other technologies quickly, right? And the more you're learning that ability to be curious and pick up new skills, I think that is what we need in a world where, every 6 months we see these leaps and changes in what the state of the art really looks like.
So we'll talk a little bit about the leaps in a few minutes. I do want to double click on Agentic and Blueprint. So tell me a little bit about, in your views, what are the challenges that enterprises are facing to implement Agentic, and how does Blueprint address those challenges for them?
So I think Blueprint goes squarely at two challenges that enterprises have. The first challenge is, I think a lot of Agentic and a lot of the approaches that we see out there kind of sit on this prompt-based configuring of agents, right? I'm going to construct a prompt and I'm going to tell with the prompt what the agent wants to do. And even if you've spent only a little bit of time playing with ChatGPT, you know that getting the prompt right and what you put in the prompt has dramatic impacts on what you get as the outcome. And even if you get the same prompt to the same model multiple times in a row, because there's a natural sort of randomness built into the model, you might not even get the same response, which is a great thing if I'm trying to brainstorm some copy for an ad or an ebook. It's a great thing if I want to generate some images, right? It's a great thing if I want to have get AI to suggest to me org structures I should consider. It's not a great thing if you're asking that AI to process a claim or investigate a financial bit of fraud, right? There are times in our business where we want consistency. And I think that consistency and transparency gap is something that when I talk to leaders and enterprises, is one of the big things that they're confronting, because all this agent stuff sounds miraculous, but when they put it in front of their compliance teams and they put it in front of their CISOs and all the other people who actually have to sign off on using this, they run into a little bit of a wall. And what Blueprint does is we kind of shift that problem. And we say, well, great, let's use the agent to design the workflows. Like Blueprint, when you think about it, is a collection of agents behind the scenes that know how to interpret documents and research best practices and look at libraries of content, and then come back and recommend a workflow or a collection of workflows for your app. So the power we get with Blueprint is I'm able to use the power of agents to design the workflow, but then I'm able to have a human being say, yeah, that's how I want to process this claim. That's the rules. And then I can take and I can deploy that, and I can wrap agents around it so I can have agentic conversations with that workflow. I can dispatch agents at various steps of the workflow to do things like interpret a document or do additional research for me. But I get the guarantee that the steps of that workflow, the beats that we've laid out, are always going to get hit. So Blueprint as an agentic workflow designer is sort of the first point. I think the other gap that enterprises are hitting is they got to make all this stuff work with, for many of them, is a lot of legacy systems. And, it's really, really hard both to find the time to invest in innovation when you're maintaining legacy and you've got sunk cost and sunk time. But it's also really hard to make any of this agentic stuff work with some of these systems that were never designed to be API driven, were never designed to work in the modern world. So a lot of what we've been doing in Blueprint and what we're going to be showing at Pega World is being able to take documentation of your legacy system, maybe a doc, maybe some code analysis that somebody has done. We've even been working with just recording a screen cam video of somebody using the app, import it into Blueprint, and have Blueprint extract from that, well, here's the workflows, here are the data models, here are the interface points, here are the people who might need to use this. And not just repackage and update the code so you can lift and shift it, but actually help you now rethink what do the workflows inherent in that application need to look like in order for you to operate in a modern, digital, omni-channel, agentic kind of way. And if I can accelerate that path for our clients to move that legacy debt into a cloud-native agentic framework, I think that's another huge thing that that both Pega, but frankly, we're going to need the knowledge and the power of organizations like Coforge to actually help accelerate our clients through that journey, so that then they have the infrastructure and the architecture in place to really take advantage of all the stuff that agents can do.
So one of the most interesting things that I've seen with the use of a Blueprint in the field with Coforge is having clients actually play with it and design something as we're sitting there in, some form of meeting,
Yeah.
a traditional sales call, etc. And the power of the technology almost enabling that sales effort it's just amazing for me. Have you had any personal experiences where you've witnessed that?
I mean, I do not have a client conversation these days that generally doesn't involve me doing a blueprint, either doing a blueprint on my laptop. Sometimes I open up my phone and do a blueprint there. Because if you've been in the business, right, of selling software solutions, right, and Coforge obviously is sort of in the solutions business. Pega as a platform company, we're not coming in with a pre-built widget that fits neatly into a need. We're actually coming with a platform and helping the client visualize what the solution needs to look like. And the ability for us in like just a couple minutes to go from idea to, well, here's what the app could look like. The workflows would look this. Do you want to preview it? Great. Here's what your user screens would look like. Here's what your mobile app would look like. Here's what it would look like integrated to your website. Here's what it would look like if you were having a chat conversation with it. And have that happen in minutes. The acceleration of understanding with the client. And it allows us, frankly, to also very quickly realize the things that, hey, might be interesting ideas, but maybe there's not value there. Great. Let's neither us nor the client waste time on that. Let's move to the solution where they can actually really see value. And it allows us to very quickly go from an idea to a working prototype. And then ultimately, as we're going to hear from some clients at Pega World, we've got clients who are taking that blueprint prototype and turning it into a running app in a time frame measured in hours. So the acceleration, right, of time to value, and then the ability of us at both Pega, but also folks like you, to then be able to come in and showcase not just Pega technology, but more important, your own knowledge and your own experience and domain expertise and different vertical areas or other business domains, and have that be just embedded into what you're showing in Blueprint, which is another capability we're going to be talking about at Pega World. I think it's just going to be a game changer for one, how we as Pega and Coforge go to market, but more importantly, for how our clients accelerate the pace of actually driving real transformation.
How quickly do you see the movement from the lower left to the top right in terms of the lower left being low ROI, customer service, the top right being driven by regulatory, et cetera? And what's that acceleration cycle from using Pega and the platform and Blueprint to actually having meaningful applications that are addressing the most impactful areas of business?
So, I would argue, and you're going to hopefully hear some of this at Pega World, that that's what we're doing already. We're going to have Vodafone on stage talking about how, working with Blueprint, they're changing the way that they deploy their new network technology, right? So basically core to their future as a telco, right? They're using this to redefine and accelerate those processes and accelerate their speed to market. You mentioned customer service. I actually think customer service isn't sort of down in the lower left. I think customer service for a lot of our clients is one of the most high value things that they can do, because right now with the technology, so much of customer service still is broken processes. It's siloed systems. I've got, ways of doing it in the contact center and another way in the digital. And yet now I've built a chatbot. It's got another way. And if I can get to a common process for my customer service experiences that works across all my channels, I can thread this needle of simultaneously saving money for the business, because I'm increasing efficiency. I'm moving more of my customer contact into self-service channels, right? I'm driving massive savings for the organization, yet I'm actually delivering a better and faster customer response to the customer. So I'm improving my customer satisfaction. I'm improving my retention rates. I'm improving my NPS and my likelihood to recommend, right? And if I can do that in a single solution, that the ROI on that is huge.
So we talked a little bit before we kicked things off about systems of record, the shift in enterprise software, and we're talking about legacy transformation, and we see that a lot. One of our longstanding clients is actually trying to compete with upstarts, that are nibbling away. They're the behemoth in the industry, but they're beginning to see that, and they're tied to a few things: unstructured or bad data and legacy debt. How does Pega help address those two? I would call, elephants in the room.
So I think, from the legacy debt perspective, the work that we've done with Blueprint to be able to help you move and migrate that legacy onto, Pega Cloud, which is a modern cloud-based system, works across channels, has AI integrated everywhere into it, like accelerating that move so that you can not just retire some of these legacy systems, but actually rethink them, right? I think there's been this first phase of legacy transformation, which was sort of replatforming. So we would just kind of pick this system up and move it to the cloud. And it's like, oh, great. So now my 3270 screen is running on the cloud, which, maybe there's some maintenance save there, but I actually haven't significantly changed my user experience, my customer experience, the efficiency of the underlying system. So if I can not only retire the system, but actually rethink it, make it better, improve the workflows, and do that in one fell swoop, and do that really, really fast, which I think you'll end up seeing at PegaWorld, that I think is a huge step. The other thing that involves is we've been enhancing a lot of the capabilities in Pega Cloud so that as our clients actually move not just the systems, but actually some of the system of record data that's associated with it, there's a clear path to move that either into cloud-based databases that we're hosting on Pega Cloud, or some of their own cloud databases or cloud data stores, or some of the emerging sort of what I would call data fabric vendors. So think folks like Snowflake, Databricks, etc. But have that seamlessly integrated into their Pega Cloud environment. So they're moving both the system logic, the workflows, the rules, the experiences, but they're also able to actually move and shift the data. So they truly can both shut this down, but now also have that data in an accessible format that is much more open and ready for things like training of AI and statistical models and plugging into all forms of some of the intelligence that we're going to be able to bring to bear.
Tell me a little bit, in some of these legacy systems, there is expertise and IP that's embedded in a way that makes it very, very difficult to take it to a new level, a different and more. How does Blueprint help address that?
So I think that there's a really interesting kind of balance here that organizations need to strike. And sometimes we go as far as to avoid the term legacy systems, and we kind of rename them heritage systems, because I think a lot of times for our clients, their core value as a business is actually embedded in a lot of these systems, right? The rules, the logic, the processes, the things that they've developed over, in many cases, decades, that have allowed them to become, for our clients and your clients, as you were saying, the dominant players, the behemoths in some of these industries. And what we've been working on with Blueprint is capabilities that allow us to go and extract and analyze those systems. And some of those are ours. Some of those, for example, are integrated with some of our partners. We've been working, AWS has a tool they call Transform, which actually can do code analysis of COBOL and extract out some of the logic from it. And we can now actually take that Transform output and pull it into Blueprint and use it as the input to help define what we actually put into the Blueprint as well. But we're also trying to get to other frankly, I think simpler solutions, right? This idea of being able to literally just record a screen cam of somebody using an application, which, believe it or not, tells you a lot about the application. It tells you what the steps of the process are. It tells you what the fields are at every step. And you basically can interpret the data model from the underlying application just by looking at enough 3270 screens. You pick up a lot of the validation and the business rules that come along the way as the user's kind of going through. So we're also playing with ideas like that. I don't think we're ever going to get to a point where it just naturally picks up everything. Nor, frankly, do I think that we want it to, because I think we want to distill what's the essential parts of those applications. But we also want to allow room for the business as part of this to rethink some of these processes, right? Because I think a lot of times the way businesses work is constrained by how things are set in their legacy and not actually the business outcomes they're trying to drive for their clients. So how do we take that logic, uplift it, and then allow the business to maybe rethink how that process works? What steps of this process should now actually be agentically done? What steps of these processes do we not need anymore? How is this process integrated into existing service channels or other apps that my employees are using so they don't have to, swivel chair all over the place to get things done? We want to make sure that that part of the conversation is enabled so that you're truly rethinking the application as you move it forward.
So I spend a lot of nights at the dinner table having long discussions around AI, and generally ends up my daughter and my wife will leave, and my son and I are sitting there, and we're uh, going off tangents.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we talk about a lot is the emerging trends and what's next. And I know that's so difficult, but is there anything that you've seen that just really excites you? That beyond this agentic piece that we're really seeing emerge.
Yeah, I mean, I think the agentic piece is exciting. I frankly also think that for when you cut through a little bit of the vendor hype, of which we are equally guilty of, right? And you get down to what actual organizations are doing, we're still so early in the agentic game. And if you ask Gartner and Forrester, they will tell you, yeah, companies, we found some agents that are deployed, but really when you peel back the onion, they're like fancy chatbots, right? So I think we are just starting what that journey looks like. So a couple things. I'm excited about the idea of multi-agent systems. So, one of the things that we've done in Blueprint, and we'll talk about this at Pega World as well, we have a blueprint not just for workflows, but we have one that actually figures out next best action strategies, so customer engagement, marketing. What's the right conversation to have with a customer? And how do you do that in real time? And the way that blueprint actually works is it's a collection of agents. There's a strategy agent that analyzes your existing offer portfolio. There's a marketing agent that actually goes and figures out how would I define the personas that you want to activate? Who are they? Who are the target audiences that you are speaking to? There's a compliance agent that actually looks through and says, great, and everything that we're doing, does it follow the rules that you need to have? There's a brand agent that actually looks and says, okay, we've understood your brand. Do these offers and the text that we're putting together, does that actually correspond with brand guidelines and brand tone and imagery? And so what happens is you get a really kind of rapid deployment and design of these pretty sophisticated next best action strategies, but also with lots of checks along the way. And I'm doing all of this at design time because that way I still have a human in the loop to go, I would still change that. Brand agent, you missed this thing, but so that that I think is going to be really powerful and really exciting. I think it's just so untapped, our ability to use these agentic and multi-agent systems at design time. The other thing that I think is coming is what I would call optimization and agentic optimization. The ability of us to continuously monitor every process that we have, right? And I'm not we've had process mining for years. I think process mining is an interesting tool. We've got capabilities there, but I think it's also always had this little bit of like an academic feel to it. We're going to generate some process. I'm going to show you some diagrams for this bottleneck here. I actually think there's an ability to have agents that are looking at that same set of data, but not only pointing out bottlenecks, but actually surfacing solutions and saying, well, I would make this change to this process. I would add this step here. I would rewrite this decision. And then always with a human sort of on the steering wheel being like, yeah, go, make that happen. Right. And having that always running in the business, so the business is constantly retuning itself, I think it's going to be like that is the sort of self-optimizing autonomous business that we've been talking about for a while. And given the pace at which we're moving, I don't think it's like a 2-3 year window. I think it's like a 6-month window, right? Until we're going to actually start seeing some real examples of that.
So you touched on something that could be a whole other podcast, which is around the process aspect of this. And it's actually one of the passions that I have. The story of Orion at UPS. And, the slow adoption of that, because it wasn't about the technology. It was about people's willingness to address change.
Right.
That change in process. And everything we do with technology and AI has some human impact or some business process impact, which is, that can be probably one of the single biggest inhibitors.
One of the phrases I've been using lately, and I don't know if it will ever catch on, but this idea of integrated disruption, and I feel like so often when disruption comes around, the initial response is, well, this is going to change everything, right? So like Airbnb shows up, right? Well, Airbnb, that's it. We're not, no hotels, no more hotels. Everything's just going to be Airbnb. Well, actually, no. It turns out sometimes you still just want to go to a hotel, have somebody clean your room every night, be able to walk downstairs to the restaurant, collect your loyalty points. Like sometimes you just want that. And it's fine. Sometimes you want an Airbnb, and an Airbnb is great, and it offers a whole new spectrum of travel possibilities and ways of experience things. Right. And I think sometimes we always treat this stuff as, you hear some of these executives say, well, we're not going to hire humans anymore. We're just going to run on AI. And a lot of that you then end up kind of backtracking from, because what you realize is actually this AI stuff only delivers value if I integrate it in with humans. Like my customers are humans, right? We have a natural tendency to want to talk with humans. My strategists, my executives, leaders, right? Like all of that needs to integrate in. And that's not to say this technology is going to be disruptive, but I feel like so often we turn this always into like an either or game. Like, I think it was just earlier today, one of the CEOs of an AI company was talking about just, massive job reductions from AI. I think it will be massive job changes, right? And there will be massive skill changes. And I think, frankly, like all of that, the human side of the change will take far longer than the technology side of the change to drive through. But I also don't think we're going to run around with companies, the enterprises, where they have absolutely no software engineers and everything is just done with agents. Right?
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And that's what we're hoping for. Well, Don, I know you probably have a lot to do to prepare for Pega World. Thank you so much for being here. Where can people find you?
So
LinkedIn.
So LinkedIn, you got to figure out how to spell my name. So it's DonSchuerman. But I'm on LinkedIn. I post there all the time. I'm sure we'll post this podcast there. You can always track me down there. You can find me, of course, at Pega.com. I encourage everybody to check out Blueprint. Go to Pega.com/Blueprint. Try it out. Like we want to make this technology accessible to anybody because we think it's pretty powerful. So it's free. You can just go try it. So I encourage everybody to do that.
I can tell you that I created a coffee shop, which is a little bit of a passion. So I love Blueprint. Don, thank you so much. We'll see you on the other side of Pega World.